par Pejman Ganouni de Stanford, qui est radiologue à Stanford, sur comment les HIFU sont intégrés dans les soins dans son hôpital. Et demain, des reviews par des jeunes médecins de leur domaine sur l'avancement des ultrasons thérapeutiques dans leur spécialité. Ensuite, une table ronde avec des médecins un peu moins jeunes, un peu plus experts, je veux dire, qui nous expliqueront un petit peu les problématiques qu'ils ont pu rencontrer dans la mise en place des premiers essais avec cette techno. Et d'autres présentations plus sur les aspects réglementaires, remboursement, qui seront également, je suis sûr, passionnantes pour nous tous. Voilà.
Moi, je vais juste effectivement remercier aussi les sponsors, bien évidemment, remercier toute l'équipe du Lapto qui s'est énormément investie pour l'organisation de cet événement. Je pense à Poutou, je pense à Cyril, je pense à Catherine, mais également Charles-André Philippe, qui est mon jeune collègue très prometteur dans le service, et puis c'est impliqué. Merci. Voilà, alors l'idée de ce symposium, il est assez simple, hein, et vous l'avez vu dans le programme, c'est finalement on a que ce soit les chercheurs, que ce soit les cliniciens, que ce soit les industriels, on a un peu tous le même objectif, c'est finalement faire progresser la science et faire progresser le soin des patients, améliorer la prise en charge et être de moins en moins invasif. Et je crois que raisonnablement, les ultrasons focalisés sont vraiment une des opportunités thérapeutiques de demain. Ce qu'il faut, c'est qu'on arrive finalement à échanger, à faire tomber les barrières qui existent entre industriels, chercheurs et cliniciens. Donc c'est vraiment l'objectif de ce jour et demi qu'on va avoir ensemble. Donc voilà, il y a beaucoup de gens à distanciel, mais globalement, il faut qu'il y ait des échanges qu'on ouvre un peu, qu'on nous ouvre un petit peu le champ visuel. Il y a les ophtalmos, je crois aussi. Donc le champ visuel, il faut qu'il soit, en sortant de ce séminaire, qu'il soit 2 fois plus large que ce qu'il est aujourd'hui, pour qu'on puisse imaginer les traitements de demain. Voilà, écoutez, je vous souhaite un bon symposium.
So it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. His name is that most of you know him. Neal was a neurosurgeon working at UVA mainly, and he had the great idea a few years ago to create this foundation in Charlottesville, who is supporting research on therapeutic ultrasound worldwide. So he gently agreed to give an introduction to the field today. So Neal, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, you can share your slide. I think you. All right.
Good. First, let me apologize for speaking in English, but there is no alternative. And it's a pleasure to be able to address this group this afternoon. What I'm going to do is share our view of focused ultrasound from the perspective of the foundation. So what if you could treat a patient with a malignant brain tumor, a glioblastoma, using focused ultrasound instead of, or in addition to surgery and radiation and chemotherapy, and thereby extend his life from 1 to perhaps 5 or even more years? Or what if you could convert metastatic ovarian cancer from a death sentence to a chronic manageable disorder using focused ultrasound? Or what if you could stop the progression of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease, or even reverse the neurological deficits using focused ultrasound? It sounds like Star Wars, like science fiction, but it's not. It's very much rooted in reality. So focused ultrasound is the most powerful sound you will never hear, but it's a sound that someday would save your life. Focused ultrasound is an early stage, totally non-invasive therapeutic technology that is a game-changing, highly disruptive alternative or complement to surgery, radiation therapy, a new way of delivering drugs more safely and effectively, and of enhancing the effectiveness of the immunotherapeutic agents. Being totally non-invasive, it can be performed on an outpatient basis with no incisions, fewer complications that lead to more rapid recovery, and improved outcomes and decreased cost of care. In its evolution, focused ultrasound is where magnetic resonance imaging was 35 years ago. At that time, MR imaging was essentially unknown, but today it is widely recognized that that MR has revolutionized diagnosis. Focused ultrasound has the potential to revolutionize therapy to the same degree that MR revolutionized diagnosis, but it's in its early stage still. It's where MR was 35 years ago. And just like MR resulted in the creation of a new multi-billion-dollar diagnostic imaging business, focused ultrasound has the potential to create a multi-billion-dollar non-invasive therapy industry. So a few examples. This is a left-handed architect whose dominant hand, his left hand, has been affected by essential tremor, a cousin of Parkinson's disease. And you can see he's been unable to draw for more than 10 years. So he was treated with focused ultrasound. Immediately after the treatment, his tremor was completely gone. For the first time he could draw in 10 years. And there he is 3 months later, showing his absolutely no treatment. This is a young woman with a gigantic uterine fibroid, a benign tumor of the wall of the uterus. These are very common, but rarely get to be this large. She was offered a hysterectomy, the standard of care, but she wanted her uterus so she could have children. So she was treated instead with focused ultrasound. And instead of a big operation, 5 to 7 days in the hospital, 4 to 6 weeks to recover, she was treated as an outpatient, went home the same day, and went back to work for 2 days. And there she is 9 months later, after the tumor, which had been destroyed by the ultrasound, had been absorbed by her body. This is an MR of a young woman with breast cancer. She did not want a surgical lumpectomy because she didn't want a scar and a dimple in her breast. And again, she was treated as an outpatient with focused ultrasound. This is a 62-year-old surgeon in Milan who had this large pancreatic cancer that had failed 2 very aggressive courses of chemotherapy. He was given 3 months to live just for pain palliation. He was treated with focused ultrasound. You can see in the third pane, about 80% of the tumor was destroyed. Surprisingly, 22 months later, he was still alive. The tumor was essentially gone, but more surprisingly, his systemic metastatic tumors also disappeared, which sends a strong signal that focused ultrasound has an immunomodulatory effect. This is a young boy with a desmoid tumor. These are benign but very aggressively growing tumors that are almost impossible to remove surgically because they're involved with the nerves and the blood vessels and tendons and ligaments. And not infrequently, these kids end up with amputations to save their life. He was treated with focused ultrasound and can come back in the future should the tumor recur. This is a 7-year-old girl in London who was incapacitated with intractable abdominal pain and renal failure from this huge tumor filling her pelvis. She was operated upon, but the surgeons had to back out and abort the procedure because the tumor was too bloody. As a last resort, on a one-off, purely experimental basis, she was treated with focused ultrasound. And about 60% of the tumor was destroyed. In 2 days, her pain improved. In 2 weeks, her renal function returned to normal. In 6 months, she came back, and the majority of the remaining tumor was treated. This is a young woman with metastatic colorectal cancer to the liver, treated with focused ultrasound. This is an 80-year-old guy with prostate cancer diffusely throughout his gland. He was treated with focused ultrasound. His prostate returned to normal, and his PSA returned to normal as well. And this is a dog with a large tumor of the gum of his mandible. Was scheduled to have half of the mandible removed, which would have been a very problematic situation for the dog. Instead, was treated with focused ultrasound. You could see the tumor was gone. So the way focused ultrasound works is analogous to using a magnifying glass to focus beams of light and burn a hole in a leaf. But with focused ultrasound, instead of an optical lens focusing beams of light on targets deep in the body, with a high degree of precision and accuracy, an acoustic lens is used to focus multiple beams of ultrasound energy. And where each of the individual beams goes through the tissue, it has about the same power as diagnostic ultrasound, so it has no effect. But at that focal point where the beams converge, there's a large number of interesting ways in which the ultrasound affects tissue. So here on the left, you can see microscopic slide of liver, and on the right, the brain, and note the scale. The margin between what's treated and untreated with focused ultrasound is about 1/10 of a millimeter, which is infinitely sharper than can be achieved with radiation, and in fact, sharper than can be achieved with the scalpel. And at that focal point, we now understand about 25 mechanisms by which focused ultrasound affects tissue. 10 years ago, we only understood 3. Now we understand 25, in contrast to radiation therapy, which only has 1 mechanism of action. The fact that there are so many different mechanisms of action creates the opportunity to treat a wide variety of serious medical disorders, including destroying tissue either by heating it at the focal point, like burning the hole in the leaf, or by just using mechanical energy of the ultrasound to create microshock waves and disrupt cell membranes. And there's other ways to destroy tissue as well. Something which we feel has tremendous potential is to use focused ultrasound to deliver drugs and other therapeutic agents in extremely high concentrations, precisely to the point in the body where they're needed, and minimizing the systemic side effects or toxicity. And there's a number of ways for doing this, one of which is to use something called microbubbles. These are hollow lipid spheres about 1/10 of the diameter of a red blood cell. The microbubbles can be loaded up with drugs, chemotherapy, agents for cancer, genes or growth factors for Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease. And then millions and millions of the microbubbles are injected intravenously. And they circulate throughout the body. Wherever the blood goes, the microbubbles go to every tissue and every organ. But the drug is totally inactive, except at the focal point where the ultrasound is focused, and that causes the microbubbles to burst and release the pharmacological payload. Opening the blood-brain barrier. The blood vessels in the brain are different than the blood vessels in the rest of the body in that they are coated with a single layer of highly specialized cells that exist to keep toxins and bacteria and viruses from entering the brain. But unfortunately, they also keep important drugs for brain tumors or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease from getting into the brain. You can see on the right that white rectangle, focused ultrasound can be used to reversibly or temporarily open the blood-brain barrier in a very targeted manner, allowing access of these important drugs to the pathology. Immunomodulation. When cancer cells aggregate and form tumors that have a way of camouflaging themselves from the body's immune system. Focused ultrasound can strip away the camouflage, allow the body's immune system to recognize the tumors, and augment or enhance the effectiveness of the cancer immunotherapy drugs. Now, the point in the body where the ultrasound is targeted is controlled and guided and monitored by imaging, either ultrasound imaging or in this case, MR imaging. And this is a metastatic brain tumor that is targeted. The treatment is planned. And then the magic is that you can actually watch the changes in the tissue in real time while the treatment is being administered by doing scans through the target every second or so. In contrast to radiation therapy, where the effects are invisible and it takes weeks or months for the effect to be apparent, with focused ultrasound, the effects are immediate and verifiable. Today, around the world, there are more than 130 indications or disorders in various stages of research and development and commercialization. 10 years ago, there were only 3. Most of these are in relatively early stages of development. Around the world, only about 30 have regulatory approval, and reimbursement both from government and private sources is just occurring. And this is a manifestation of the fact that the field is young and still has a lot of opportunity to grow. Now, when you see 130 indications, it sounds too good to be true. It sounds like snake oil, good for whatever else. But focused ultrasound is not a panacea. It's not a silver bullet. It's not for every patient. It's not for every indication. So because of the potential impact of this technology, this amazing technology, on, without exaggeration, millions of patients around the world, there's a lot of impetus to make it available in the shortest possible time. The problem is that the evolution of any new, highly disruptive therapeutic technology is a glacial process that often takes decades, because the process is very complicated and involves a large number of difficult steps that have to be accomplished by a bewildering array of organizations in the ecosystem. And there's some fairly daunting other problems like lack of awareness, regulatory approvals take a long time, insurance reimbursement takes longer, physicians as a segment of society are slow to change, fairly vicious turf battles between medical specialists and so on. So about 16 years ago, when we first got involved with this field, we cast about for a playbook or a model that we could follow that would shorten the time from laboratory research to widespread utilization as a standard of care. Because every month that goes by that the technology is not available translates into unnecessary death and disability and suffering for countless people. But unfortunately, we couldn't find a model to follow, so we were obliged to create one. So we started the Focused Ultrasound Foundation. The foundation is a unique medical research education and advocacy organization that was started in 2006. It is a very entrepreneurial, high impact, high performance, high technology service organization that's centered in Charlottesville, Virginia. We have a very much of a global influence, and we've recently opened subsidiaries in Hong Kong and in London. The mission of the foundation is very straightforward, just to accelerate the development and adoption of focused ultrasound as a global standard of care. The way we work is on a frequent quarterly basis. We examine the critical path from laboratory research to widespread utilization and identify the choke points, and then apply resources where we have adequate resources to do a good job overcoming those barriers. The foundation engages in a variety of activities. We have become the compass or the guiding light for the entire field. We spend a lot of time and money and energy breaking down silos of secrecy to foster collaboration between government, academia, and industry. The cornerstone of all of our activities is research. About 65% of our budget is to support research. So we organize, we conduct, and we fund research. We are interested ecumenically in all the 130 indications, but where we try and concentrate our team's mental energy are on the brain indications: Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, OCD, depression, epilepsy, stroke. The hottest area for right now is cancer and cancer immunotherapy, particularly glioblastoma, pancreatic cancer, breast cancer, melanoma. We have a fellowship program where we bring to Charlottesville mid-career clinicians and scientists for 1 to 2 years, and then they go back to their home institution where we've created a sound basis for long-term collaboration. Our most successful fellow to date is Cyril Lafon. And then we have 2 internship programs, one that runs year-round here in Charlottesville at the foundation, and then we have a summer program where we twin leading experts around the world with high school and college students for the months of June, July, and August. Our website is widely recognized as the encyclopedia of focused ultrasound. I encourage you to have a look at it. About once a month, we have a webinar on topics of interest to the focused ultrasound community, whether it's cancer immunotherapy or blood-brain barrier opening or pancreatic cancer. Our newsletter, which I hope you'll sign up for, comes out every 2 weeks. Since 2008, in the DC area, we've been hosting the largest and most important international meeting on focused ultrasound. At the first meeting, there were 32 papers presented. This November, we had to pivot to a virtual platform, but more than 380 papers were presented, from 32 to 380. 2 years ago, we had 450 people from 23 countries. This year, we had more than 1,800 people from 57 countries. And then every year, we organize several small meetings, 25 to 50 individuals from industry, academia, NIH, FDA, clinicians, scientists, physicists, engineers, business people, where we come up with a roadmap of technology development, preclinical laboratory studies, and clinical trials necessary to create a new indication in the shortest possible time. We have a number of centers of excellence that we've helped create around the world. These are luminary sites. LabTau is the very best of the ones that we've created. This year we'll do Oxford University in England and Seoul National University in Korea. Essential to advancing this field is to be certain that all of the stakeholders are aware of the potential of focused ultrasound, so we engage in a variety of activities, awareness events such as this one today. We have a very aggressive media placement program. Now, highly disruptive technologies like focused ultrasound evolved from concept and laboratory research to widespread utilization exponentially. And in the last several years, we just finally passed the inflection point of the curve where the dialogue has shifted from if focused ultrasound will have an important role to play in the therapeutic armamentarium to when, from if to when. But more importantly, we're now just transitioning from what's been historically primarily a research environment to the beginning of a commercial treatment environment. From science to sales. And if our vision that more than 1 million patients will be treated each year with focused ultrasound in 10,000 installations is to become a reality, clearly successful commercial organizations are required to manufacture and distribute the equipment. So we have a program plus partners where we work with the manufacturers to help them get regulatory approval and reimbursement. We help them get financing. We connect the manufacturers with other manufacturers for strategic relationships or with academic research laboratories for technology transfer. To execute the strategy, we've got an outstanding team of about 45 individuals, 6 MDs, 8 MBAs, 2 people with MBAs and PhDs, and about 12 PhDs. The board of directors is not a philanthropic board. It very much is a corporate governance board, a bunch of people who are very active and engaged and passionate. And we have another organization called the Council, which helps connect us with individuals of substance who can help donate to the foundation and individuals of influence who need to be made aware of the technology. We have a number of partner organizations. So we can posit, we can assume that if the foundation didn't exist, by the year 2035, the field will be fully mature and more than 1 million patients will be treated in 10,000 sites without the foundation. So all we're doing is investing money in a variety of activities that overcome barriers that shift the adoption curve to the left, saving time, saving lives.
When I first heard I had Parkinson's, I was very surprised. I always thought of it being an older person's illness, and I've always seen people in wheelchairs, so I thought I was going to lose all my mobility. Basically anything that required movement, I couldn't do it. And my leg would bounce uncontrollably. It would hyperextend and actually lock backwards. It was very, very painful. I couldn't walk, so I had to be taken in a wheelchair to the hospital. With each treatment, I could feel myself getting stronger and stronger. My symptoms were getting less and less, and my pain was getting less. Then the clinical trial director, she looked at me and she says, "Get up, you can walk." And I thought, I can walk. It was amazing. I got there in the wheelchair, unable to walk, and immediately following it, I walked to the room. It was a miracle. Focused ultrasound treatment has given me back my life. I've been able to go on walks. I've been able to run, being able to ride my bike again. It's a miracle.
Well, at the end of the day, focused ultrasound and the foundation, what we do is we take our donors' money, use it to make focused ultrasound, which results in miracles like you just saw by transforming disease into health and happiness for hopefully millions of people around the world.
Thank you very much, Neal. please stay around. We may have a couple of questions. Patrick, over there.
Yes, Neal, you were here on the board of Insight Tech.
Maybe you can open your and get closer. Yeah, microphone.
Sorry, Neal, your Insight Tech is doing a clinical trial for glioblastoma, and you should see any results from that yet?
Patrick was. Insight is doing a clinical trial in glioblastoma, and do you have any news from that?
Yeah, so Insight Tech is there's a number of clinical trials on glioblastoma by Insight Tech, by the French company Carthera, by the Taiwanese company Navifus. So all these clinical trials are early stage feasibility, safety studies to show that you can open the blood-brain barrier and do that safely in these patients and deliver drugs. The furthest along is the Carthera study, and all these studies are looking encouraging, and there's probably 5 or 6 or 7 studies ongoing, but they're early stage.
Et ceux qui sont connectés à distance, n'hésitez pas à utiliser le chat pour poser des questions. Une autre question? Maybe one question for you, Neal. So you know very well the field. I mean, you have a very good view of everything going on in the world, in our community. So what is for you the next big application of HIFU in the next 5 years?
I think two. One is the brain indications, you know, and it's going to be interesting to see how well the research pans out for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and ALS. But I think that the biggest win in the next 5 years will be cancer immunotherapy. As you know, the miraculous cancer immunotherapy drugs like the checkpoint inhibitors are effective in 20 to 40% of the patients. Focused ultrasound has the potential to increase the response rate to 60 or 80 or even 90%. So that's huge. Secondly, a number of those patients who are successfully treated will break through, and focused ultrasound can be used to convert those patients to responders again. And then a number of patients have to have the drug discontinued because of side effects. Well, focused ultrasound can reduce the amount of drug needed and potentially make those patients responders again. So we are really, really excited about cancer immunotherapy.
All right. One last question, maybe?
Yes, just a question. According to your huge experience, do you think there is some disease, some pathology that it will be never possible to be treated using HIFU? You know, we don't want to lose our time, our money. So do you think there is some fields of disease that it's not necessary, it's not possible? It's not interesting to go further.
Well, yeah, sure. So first of all, I think that you obviously need something to target. So any blood type of diseases like leukemia will have no role. But the real issue is, you know, there are good treatments for many diseases, and where is focused ultrasound going to be superior? And that's one of the things that we are spending a lot of time and money trying to sort out. But I mean, there are I can't specifically answer that question in the time allotted. So it's a good topic for discussion.
Well, there is nothing to do against COVID. Very disappointing.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Cyril?
So there is nothing to do against COVID with ultrasound. It's very, very disappointing.
Oh, okay, yeah, right. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Neal, for doing this great presentation. Oh, one more question by Mark Oskowski from IDA.
Good morning, Neal. You said the next application or indication, the one you gave, I guess, was on the research side. And you were mentioning in your presentation that you want to save some time in reaching the standard of care status. So what is for you the next or the current indication that will be commercially successful in the next years to get to the standard of care in your care?
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I think what's closest, at least in the U.S., is Parkinson's disease. We're very close. The Parkinson's tremor is already approved and reimbursed, but the cardinal or motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease, that's coming. And then we see some other sort of rare disorders like osteoid osteoma, and you'll hear from Paigey next about some really exciting desmoid tumor type things. But we're really looking, prostate cancer is doing very well. Hopefully benign prostatic hypertrophy before too long.
All right. Any more questions? So thank you again, Neal.
Thank you.